everyone! Before we start today, I just wanted to let you all know that I'm going to be in a virtual live reading of a stage play version of Pride and Prejudice, Saturday, August 15th at 2 p.m. Pacific Time. Links in the description. Hello everyone. Welcome to Jane Austen on Pointe, historical analysis of dancing in Jane Austen adaptations. I'm Cassiane Mobley, and today we'll be looking at Jane Austen's Gothic satire, Northanger Abbey. If you're new to this series, please check out my intro video called 5 Things That Jane Austen Adaptations Always Get Wrong About the Dancing, because it's an introduction to the concepts I cover throughout the series. You can also check out my videos on various adaptations of Emma and Pride and Prejudice. As always, here's a reminder, I'm not here to ruin your favorite adaptations by pointing out the historical accuracies in the dancing, but if hearing that sort of critique will bother you, this is probably not a good series for you. Today, we'll be covering the adaptation of Northanger Abbey from 1987. I'll start by giving my opinion of the adaptation as a whole, share one piece of general snark, and then review the dances. Okay, so, no matter how historically accurate they try to be, all adaptations are a product of their time. And it spills over into the artistic choices they make. I mean, check out these boho fabrics and these beehive hairstyles from the 1971 Persuasion and the 1972 Emma. And this dress from the 2005 Pride and Prejudice looks more like a mid-aughts prom gown than a Regency dress. Also, nobody wore bangs like that in the Regency. So yeah, all adaptations are a product of their time. But this adaptation of Northanger Abbey goes beyond just modern-inspired hairstyles and fabrics. Instead of a traditional soundtrack, this film inserts 1980s-inspired music with saxophones, electric guitars, and synthesizers that clash with the rest of the more traditional score. They also added a Goth fanfic insert character, just in case you missed the tie-in of Gothic literature to the Goth rock movement. Interestingly enough, I think that if they really wanted to go for a stylized adaptation, they should have leaned a lot harder into the Goth rock aesthetic. I mean, Hamilton works as a musical because it's fully committed to using modern music in its historical setting, and nothing ever deviates from that aesthetic. The same goes for Moulin Rouge's use of pop songs and show tunes for their soundtrack. But the problem with this adaptation is that it can't decide whether it wants to be a stylized adaptation or a historically accurate one, and it ends up failing at both. The tonal dissonance and the dated music do make it hilarious to watch, however. In terms of acting, I really like the girl playing Catherine, but I can't stand the guy playing Tilney. He lacks Tilney's signature sparkling wit and joviality. He has a few good lines from the book, but his delivery is really flat. For the most part, he's more preachy than anything else, and that feels so out of character. Catherine and Henry also don't have any chemistry together in this version, and that's a problem. Catherine's friendship with Eleanor seems like the best developed relationship in the whole movie, and it almost makes me wish they had run away to Wales together to take up gardening. And if you don't get that reference, look it up. Also, I really don't like what they did with Isabella in this version. She's so transparently phony with that constant creepy smile that the audience can never believe in her friendship with Catherine. And of course, this is a huge problem because most of the first half of the novel hinges on Catherine and Isabella being instant best friends, and the audience slowly figuring out how manipulative and selfish Isabella really is. Alright, so my smark for this version is the really uncomfortable public bath scene. I mean, there's this surreal element of the whole thing with the steam and the weird bathing costumes and the food and drinks that they're having while bathing. Again, this leads into the grotesque of Gothic in a way that wasn't present in the book. My husband and I sometimes enjoy watching this version just to go MST3K on how goofy it is. It's such a product of its time that it kind of becomes a thing unto itself and therefore good? No, not good, but at least entertaining. Actually, you know what my real snark is? Mrs. Allen doesn't know what muslin is. No, seriously, when she complains about tearing her muslin dress, she's not wearing muslin. She's wearing an opaque silk-like fabric. In the Regency era, muslin was a semi-sheer cotton fabric used in fashionable dresses to give the drapey look of figures from classical sculpture. It was usually white, and its extremely delicate nature made it expensive and only for the elite, for a time surpassing silk as the luxury fabric for women. In modern times, it usually denotes a cheap, undyed broadcloth used to make mock-ups of fitted garments. This fabric, however, fails to fit those definitions of muslin. I honestly don't know how you can make a Jane Austen adaptation and not know what muslin is. I mean, it's like trying to do the 1930s without knowing what the bias cut is, or the 1970s without polyester, or the 1980s without shoulder pads. It was the iconic look for women. So that covers my general thoughts. Now let's look at the dances. Before I get into the details, let me talk a little about cotillions and quadrilles. Both the book and this adaptation mention a cotillion ball. I haven't really described cotillions or quadrilles in detail yet because it hasn't come up until now in any of the adaptations, though I did briefly mention them in my 5 Things video. In that video, I kind of lumped them together with English country dances, although I mentioned they were actually French country dances that evolved from English country dances and then made their way back to the UK, where they became popular as a thing in their own right, but I didn't really describe them beyond that. They definitely are a separate thing from English country dances, much the same way American contra dance also evolved from English country dance, but are also a separate thing. Anyway, quadrilles and cotillions have an interesting history. They first arrived in England in the 1760s, and cotillions became especially popular. When they first came over to England, cotillions were danced in 4-couple squares, and quadrilles were danced in 2-couple sets, though they quickly evolved to be danced in 4-couple squares as well. These formations were holdovers from the early days of English country dancing, and it's interesting that, whereas in England country dancing codified into long ways formations to accommodate the maximum number of couples, in France, they kept the smaller sets. These dances also have an interesting link to early English country dancing in the format of their figures that alternate between verses and a repeating chorus. In England, this eventually gave way to a single pattern of figures that repeated every round of the music because it fit better with the long ways formation. But in France, the verse and chorus format was preserved. For cotillions, the verses are known as changes, and the chorus is called the figure. Aside from formation, one of the primary differences between country dances and cotillions and quadrilles is that whereas Regency-era country dances were not choreographed, cotillions and quadrilles were, and you were expected to know the choreography in advance. This meant that you either had to memorize it, or that you at least had practiced it, and to help facilitate this, they would have rehearsals of the cotillions before the ball. They would also publish little crib sheets and ladies' fans that you could stick in your pocket to jog your memory in case you forgot the figures. Cotillions and quadrilles continued to evolve over the next half of the century, and elements of both dance forms would eventually combine to form the 1810s version of the quadrille, which became the most popular set dance of the 19th century, and basically killed the long ways version of English country dancing. This is a gross oversimplification of the subject, however, and if you really want to delve into this nonlinear evolution of quadrilles and cotillions, I have some links to wonderful research papers by Paul Cooper of regencydances.org about cotillions and quadrilles. With apologies to Paul for oversimplifying things in the above description, basically, what you need to know is that around the year 1800, when the novel Northanger Abbey is set, cotillions were still being danced, but quadrilles had not yet evolved into the popular form we know from the 1810s that continued on to the Victorian era. In the book, Catherine goes to a cotillion ball. I asked dance scholar Susan de Guardiola for some clarification on what cotillion balls were at the time of the novel, and apologies to her if I misunderstood. Basically, from what I gathered, the difference between a regular ball and a cotillion ball was that at a regular ball, cotillions could be danced by request only, whereas at cotillion balls, they would be built into the program. Cotillion balls had been popular earlier in the 1700s, but by the 1790s they were going out of fashion, though they still appeared in locations like Bath. And with that long preamble out of the way, let's look at the dances. The first dance we see is to the tune Lodoiska, better known as Part 2 of the Lancers Quadrille, and I probably butchered that name and I apologize. Please let me know if you know what the correct pronunciation is. The music is actually from the 1790s, so that's spot on for timing. The figures, not so much. It uses bogus swirly siding reconstruction of the siding figure, and the siding figure itself wasn't even being used in the Regency, being about 100 years too old. They also use a turn single and up a double and back, neither of which are period, and there's almost no footwork. And the formation is a duple minor instead of a triple minor. And the music isn't even synced very well with the dancing. So this dance gets points for having a period accurate tune, but no points basically for anything else. Moving on to the second dance, which is to the tune La Dorset, better known as the first movement of the Lancers Quadrille. This tune wasn't written until the 1810s, and this adaptation is meant to be set in the late 1790s, judging by the costumes. But honestly, the music is close enough. Also, I'm happy to see them dancing a cotillion-like dance at the Cotillion Ball. The figures look decent, except for the anachronistic swinging and the weird arms that they have over their head while they're swinging. I could see them using those arms for couples waltzing, but not for country dancing. Also, swings like that didn't really exist in the Regency, and when they refer to swinging your partner or your corner in Regency dancing, it was actually closer to a hand turn. As a positive, however, they seem to understand what an allemande figure is, with the hands interlaced behind the back like that. And that looks nice, and so does the promenade. I'm going to take some points off for walking most of the figures again, though. It kind of makes it look more like a Victorian version of a quadrille than a 1790s cotillion. But in all, this is probably the strongest dance example we see in this adaptation. The final dance of this version is also the weakest. It's a minuet country dance. Well, I'm assuming they're doing minuet footwork anyway. I can't actually see their feet, but judging by the rhythm of the pliés, it looks like a minuet. So, points for doing footwork, I guess? But points off for being the wrong era? Oh man, I'm conflicted. I love seeing footwork, but it's still an anachronism. I have to take points off for the choreography too, with those turn singles and the duple minor formation, and the fact that it doesn't seem to progress. This dance is a total failure, sadly, though I'd love to see something similar for an adaptation set earlier in the 18th century. Anyway, that covers all the dancing from this version, so now I need to give it a score. On the pro side, 2 out of 3 of the dances have proper Regency tunes, which is a higher percentage than most adaptations. The dances are filmed nicely too, with lots of time for us to enjoy each of them, and the dancers look comfortable and well rehearsed, which after the 1980 Pride and Prejudice I shall never again take for granted. Also, they actually know what a cotillion is and do a decent job of approximating Regency figures for that dance. But on the con side, none of the dances use Regency footwork, and even though the minuet stepping was impressive, I can't give any points for it because it's from the wrong era. There were also anachronistic figures in all 3 dances, and the long way sets were duple minors, one of which didn't even progress from what I could tell. In all, I like the things they got right, but it's still a pretty mixed bag, so I'm giving it 3 out of 5 dance slippers. So now, on to our series recap. Let's take a look at our current leaderboards. In first place is Pride and Prejudice 1995 with 3.5 dance slippers. Then, it's Pride and Prejudice 2005, Emma 1996 by Miramax, Emma 1996 by ITV, and Northanger Abbey 1987, all with 3 dance slippers. Followed by Emma 1972, Emma 2009, with 2.5 dance slippers. Then, Emma 2020 with 2 dance slippers, and finally, way at the bottom, Pride and Prejudice 1980 with just 1 dance slipper. So that's my review of the dances in the 1987 adaptation of Northanger Abbey. If you enjoyed it, please like us, subscribe, and share with your friends. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. In our next installment, we'll be covering the 2007 adaptation of Northanger Abbey. Thanks for watching, and have an ostentatiously good day.